Al-Jazeera and Arabiya are exceptions to the rule. By and large, most satellite channels are affiliated with various countries. Egypt has its own satellite channel that continues to hold Egyptian matters, particularly when it concerns the president as primary. For example, when the entire world's media was covering the Iraq elections live, Egyptian satellite television put in the story, buried the lead essentially, put it in the middle of the report. I turn on Libyan satellite television and they have news reports that remind me of Soviet-style propaganda, in which they criticize the West for its quote-unquote democracy and show American police officers beating demonstrators and then say, but in Libya, we have the great democracy of the People's Committees. But they forget to tell you that Libyan journalists are summarily interrogated and imprisoned, and Libya has a terrible human rights record. In Syria, the same thing exists. Syrian newspapers function as mouthpieces to their governments. I could go on and on. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the entire Arab world, the media is still controlled by the state. Journalists are intimidated. Khaled spoke of sensationalism in the Western media. The Arab media is full of conspiracy theories and outrageous rumors. There's no fact-checking. No one bothers to call people up and say, did this really happen? There's no retraction. As Abdallah said, you never hear a scandal in which a journalist had to be fired or suspended for making up stories. And as a journalist in Egypt, I actually saw people from the information ministry go up to journalists from Egyptian media and give them questions to ask. So I ask you, is this a free media? And is this a media that doesn't need lessons? I urge you to vote against the motion that the Arab media does indeed need lessons from the West.
Mona Eltahawy. Thank you very much indeed. And in a moment, I'm going to throw the questions open to the floor. But in the meantime, Mona Eltahawy, you painted a very bleak picture of the conditions under which Arab journalists have to work. That's not their fault. They're doing a very good job, and aren't they under difficult circumstances?
It's true. It's largely a state problem.
So they don't need lessons then? They're doing their best?
They do need lessons in that a lot of Arab journalists practice self-censorship. Yes, because the state is there, but
they
also,
don't want to be killed or put in jail. You can understand that.
That is true, but when
You're
they are trained...
asking them to be heroes?
No, I'm asking them to be fair, because when they're trained, you'll find that most journalism schools in the various Arab governments simply provide little or no training.
You're asking them to risk their lives, which a lot of them have done.
Bravely
so.
And
paid with
Absolutely.
their lives.
I did mention the journalists in Egypt who were assaulted and continue to be imprisoned. Absolutely. But at the same time, you're providing a service to readers that is simply either false news or self-censorship or peddling a government line that you simply know is a lie. So at the end of the day, are you risking your life for a lie, or are you providing a service that truly will help governments or countries in transition move towards reform and democracy that we so sorely need?
You're doing your best under very difficult circumstances. But then would you paint the American media in the grip of big conglomerates as the kind of example that Arab journalists should follow?
The American media has a lot to answer for. I agree with you. And having lived in the States for 5 years, I've seen the things that they have to answer for. But at the end of the day, who exposed Abu Ghraib? It was the American media. Who continues to hound the Bush administration about surveillance, wiretapping? We know all these things happen in the Arab world, but nobody dares to talk about them.
And which journalism profession, in the words of Al Gore, has morphed into the news business, which became the media industry and is now completely owned by conglomerates?
At the same time, I would use the argument you used about the circumstances in which the Arab journalists work under.
You're not allowed to use my argument.
That's why I sit next to you,
Have
Tim.
your own.
In that many American journalists are fighting those conglomerates and fighting that business control and manage to get out there and create stories and expose stories that put both the businesses and the administration to shame. And we have a lot to answer for. Again, speaking from a personal perspective, I arrived in Qatar yesterday to turn on the television to see the two main news items. A video from Ayman al-Zawahiri and a video from the kidnappers of Jill Carroll. And I have to say, as an Arab and as a Muslim, I was sitting there waiting for someone to come up on Al Jazeera and speak against those and put them in context and provide the opposing view. And as an Arab and a Muslim, I found none, and I'm dismayed. And I have to ask, is this what we've reached?
Mona Eltahawy, thank you very much indeed. A lady right at the back, you got your hand up first. Your question, please. Would you stand up?
This question is for the panel that is voting against this motion. What lesson would the journalist learn from the recent Danish publications of the cartoon pictures of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him? What can we gain from that?
This is about the cartoons which appeared in Danish and Norwegian magazines for which they have apologized, which were said to be anti-Islamic.
Number one, they've apologized. Number two, it isn't journalism. Those are cartoons and a bid for sensationalism. Number three, the protests against it have been widely reported in the Western and American media, including the Danish press. And number four, I have seen over the last 5 years, and I say this as a Muslim, embarrassed, some of the nastiest comments about Christianity and Judaism appearing in the Arab press, and nobody apologizes for it. I mean, really scandalous stuff. I apologize as a Muslim.
What do you think it says? You asked the question.
But it's still part of journalism if it's in a newspaper, and an apology doesn't say anything.
Mona Eltahawy, you wanted to say that.
Yes, I actually wrote about this issue, and I wanted to give lessons to the Arab world in how to react to a story like this or what to do, but my column wouldn't, the newspaper I write for wouldn't run that column.